Right? We're live. Happy too this morning. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Listen, everyone, we are on with Leon Ford. We are really excited because we've been talking about this for, has it been like almost a year? Like,
We got the one and
Yeah.
only. We got the one and only on here.
yes, we are so honored. We're so honored. So
Thanks for having me. I
thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you. So our audience, this is April Jackson from Open Up Pittsburgh, and I have
What's up,
Wesley
y'all? This is
Hamilton.
Wesley Hamilton. Very grateful for this call today. You know how we do. We just start to flow and get a conversation sparked up. But I'm just really hoping everybody kind of capture the nuggets that'll be shared today, just authentically through this conversation. So again, like, yeah, it's a vibe. We always happy to see you guys on these Sundays. So I think this is just another good one from someone that's actually. Are you originally from Pittsburgh, Leon?
Born and raised.
Listen, I'm reading the book, and he is.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So I
And
mean,
we're all over the place, you guys. So Leanne and I are both here in Pittsburgh right now. Wes, well, you know, you don't have to tell your business. People don't know everything.
oh, absolutely. Listen, I'm in ATL. Y'all want to holler at me? I'm in ATL. I'm here for a couple more hours before I head out. Holler at me, holler at Wes. All right. You know, I'm always on the move. I'm anywhere these wheels can go, I'm gone.
There you go. There you go.
Absolutely.
We are really happy to have Leon here. We, if you all are just jumping in and hearing, you're going to hear some amazing stories today, and that's what we're going to talk about: the power of stories. In addition to that, today is March 17th, which is so funny. I didn't even realize it was St. Patrick's Day until yesterday, right, Leon? All over Pittsburgh, everything's happening.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was actually in the parade yesterday.
Oh, were you in the parade?
Yeah. So I coach boxing here in Pittsburgh, 412 boxing team. And, we were in the parade. So we were doing our thing, kept giving out candy. I was screaming at the young men because they kept bickering with each other. All the things. Our young ladies on the team, they were mature and they were having fun. It was the young guys that were acting up yesterday, but we had a phenomenal time.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good representation. I was happy to see so many. I told my partner, I was like, "There's a lot of Black folks out here celebrating St. Patrick's Day." He was like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah. Oh, Pittsburgh showed up yesterday, and what I also noticed the diversity yesterday, right? I seen a lot of a Latin community there. I saw a lot of Asians there as well, and I was like, "Oh, where y'all be at?" You know what I'm saying? Like, there was a lot of Indians there. I was just looking at the crowd, and I was like, "Wow, this is very diverse," which is interesting for Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh is not the most diverse place. You know what I mean? And
Right,
so
right.
they have so many different people coming from to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I thought was amazing.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
No, I
That's the
actually,
sun in the back.
when you think about honestly, putting that in perspective, it could be the work that's happening. Like there's a lot of work when people are raising awareness to just allow different ethnic groups to be involved in like St. Patrick's Day parade. Not saying like that, of course, a parade, so people want to come out. But what I've seen too is like even in Kansas City, like there are a lot of people coming to other spaces just to learn how you celebrate, learn how you embrace your culture, like, and we want to have fun too, right? And so, and I mean, I think I seen someone doing like the Chinese New Year recently in Kansas City, and they were celebrating like that, and that was something new for me to see as well. So I think evolution is happening. When we think about like inclusivity, diversity, other groups just being willing to celebrate, your culture around your time, just to embrace it. Like I do see that happening more. And then like you shared about seeing Black folks, like to be honest, we got that Irish in us. We got in some way we feel like we're supposed to be
We
there.
strong. We fight back. We got the power. Yes.
I just want to see the love on Juneteenth. You know what I'm saying?
Hey.
I want to see the Asians and the Latin folks and our
Irish
Indian
folk, come on out
community.
on Juneteenth.
You know what I mean? Or Irish friends or Jewish friends. I want to see everybody out there. On Juneteenth.
Absolutely.
We'll see. We got to do some work. We got to invite them. You know what I'm saying?
There you go. There you go. Have you ever been invited to a barbecue?
It's a real potato salad. That is good. Listen, Leon, I'm happy to hear that. I was going the other way because we had to go to Altoona, which I wish everyone I'm sharing with the audience. My son's basketball team made it to quarterfinals of the state. Great. And we talk about diversity. I'm in a community where there's not a lot of diversity. So it's been really wonderful to support. But we saw the parade when we were coming off of Liberty and getting on the 376 behind us. I saw everybody there. So I'm glad you were out there representing. Today's going to be about stories. I think we started with a beautiful story. And before we kick off anything, it's Women's History Month. Me adjust my crown. And
let me put it on for you.
Thank you, Wes.
There you go.
I appreciate you. And I've been supporting with social media content. Wes, I'm trying to step up my game. Marissa and I are trying to push it forward. But I've been doing research. So last month I did a lot of research on, Black History Month and recognizing the same with Women's History Month. There's so many people in this world who have so many different abilities, right? And we don't highlight that. When I say we, the curriculum, the history, us as human beings. So I've been Black History Month, I didn't know some things. I didn't know how many of our brothers and sisters and our ancestors did the work. And I didn't realize they had disabilities. You know what I mean? They had a lot of disabilities. And of course, because we were beaten and we were enslaved and, all kind of things happened. Same thing with Women's History Month. And so it's been really an honor to do some research. And we've been, trying to put posts and put stuff out there. And so one thing I did, Frida Kahlo, one of the greatest artists in the world, I didn't know she was disabled. I always knew that she was a great artist. She was a Mexican-American. She was a brown woman. I didn't know a lot of her paintings were done in bed because she had so many disabilities from as a girl. She had a bad accident when she was 18. She was bedridden. She had multiple surgeries. She had spinal issues. And so they don't highlight that. And from her disabilities, from her pain, from her healing, she expressed it through art and is one of the greatest artists in the world. So that's just one of many people I got to do research and there's so many people, but Wes has a personal relationship, or you met Judy. And so she was the first one we kicked off with. You want to share some about Judy, who's right
now? Shout out to all the women, first and foremost, my mama. But yes, when we think about women and the history that women have made strides for, at least in the disability space, I think about Judy Heumann and just the driving force.
I'm on a Zoom call, cousin.
the driving force of Judy, and just her authentic work to make sure that awareness was raised around the disability space, and she's as you keep hearing me say, she's a woman, right? But she was more of the driving force when it came to disability activism. And Judy is just outside of her being a driving force, she was definitely a gentle soul, and she came correct. I'm passionate because I don't think until I met Judy I understood how much work needed to be done within the disability space, but also how in a sense how aggressive we need to be. Judy was one of those that you just couldn't you just couldn't cover it up. You know, you couldn't sugarcoat it. She was definitely going to tell you when you sugarcoated stuff. I mean, she corrected me on a lot of things. So, I mean, you know, we used to have a lot of conversations, and she would share with me some of my language I would use and different things, and I would learn so much from her because she was such a impactful individual. But she's just stood on her stuff. And you know, when we're thinking about Women History Month, and we're thinking about like some of the greats that aren't here anymore, you know, you have to put Judy into that as well. And so I just wanted to be able to share some grace for Judy. But then also kind of just move a little bit a different direction. Shout out to Kansas City. I know don't nobody like to hear my shout out to Kansas City all the time, but you know, yesterday was Kansas City's well, we just launched, or we have the very first women's soccer stadium in the world. And so yesterday was KC Current's first soccer game in their women's stadium. And so I just want to share some grace with that and hope that it has a ripple effect to give women their own spaces to play and things that actually can amplify. And shout out to Kansas City for showing up. And I seen it was a sold out event. So I really love to see that for women. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, that was a good shout out because we talked about Title IX and even in the past couple of weeks, right? Like the basketball, like women have been getting more ratings even than the men. And it's not just about, oh, basketball sports. It's like, that's what equality looks like. And that's when you give people the platform to just be who they are. You know, women were suppressed for so long in sports because it's like, you're not going to get the same amount of money. You're not going to get the same amount of advertisement. And we've been crushing it. So that's awesome to hear about Kansas City doing that. All right, we'll give you a little.
Absolutely. All right.
He was waiting on it. He was like, I'm going to throw it out there.
Awesome. So, friends, you know, Leon has a powerful story. It's beautiful for me to, you know, be a witness to. I've heard of Leon in the papers and all of that stuff because I was in Pittsburgh at the time, and then also, but the connection was through Wes. Wes was like, "Hey, I met this brother. Like, he's my boy. We both are wheelchair users. Let's connect." And then the power of a story. It didn't happen. Leon was on West Coast time. He's promoting his book. It was like just busy. And then a woman I've worked with who's like really dear to me, Cynthia Haynes, and been really supportive of the work that I've been doing in McKees Rocks, Leon, whatnot. She's like, April, I'm in this new organization. I want you to bring this here, yada, yada, yada. And then I'm sitting in the room and having a meeting with Leon Ford. I was like,
we got some unfinished business.
You did, right?
That's what she said. Well, she was like, we're gonna talk about this right now, but I gotta follow up with you, you know.
Yes. So thank you for coming and being here. And listen, we'd love for you to share your story and introduce yourself to the audience because not everyone knows who you are and what you're about. So can you share a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely.
And let us know. Let us know. I'm just going to, I don't sugarcoat it, Leon. You're a powerful force. And we've been trying to get you on here. So whatever you feel that you want to share in the message and how the narrative you want to share it, please do. Feel free. This is your safe space.
Absolutely. Well, in honor of Women's History Month, right, I have to acknowledge, you know, the women in my family. My cousin made a cameo, you know, with her bonnet on, you know what I'm saying?
Represent for the girls, cousin. Yes, ma'am.
You know, yesterday was my birthday, and I turned 31. And my family, man, in April, you're reading a book, so you know the family. There's just so much love, and they just showed up for me. You know what I mean? And like got the cooking, and you know the vibes, the good music, and just that love. You know what I mean? And I believe that love creates the safe space, you know, where that births courage, right? It's hard to be courageous, you know, when you don't have that love, right? And so, you know, being surrounded by love and having that self love, right? So it's all connected, you know, as I think about my story, the love has been a factor, right, that has sustained me, despite what I've been through, and especially as someone who has a disability, right, a spinal cord injury. Those love, like, they could see things before I even see that I need what I need, right? Because that's how that love shows up. My dad, I had to mute another time, right? Because my dad pulled up and he was like getting my trash together, and I'm like, "Dad, don't come in the house talking loud." You know what I'm saying? So I was texting them, right? So it was a lot of moving pieces. My nephew came in, then my son came in. I was like, it's a lot going on, but it's all
It's real
love.
life.
It's real life. It's Sunday morning, you know what I mean? And I'm just blessed, to have made it to C31 after everything, that I've been through. And so it's a little bit about, what I've been through. I'm from Pittsburgh, born and raised. I come from an incredible family, full of love, but it's also complex, right? One thing that I try to do with my book is, highlight the duality, right? Because, a lot of times, especially as I talk to many of our students, a lot of times people experience the dysfunction, and the dysfunction is so overwhelming, they feel like they can't acknowledge the love, or that they can't accept the love, or the love is just dysfunctional, right? And so I try to explain, and help people understand the duality of people, right, where the love can exist 1,000%, right, but you can still have the dysfunction, and sometimes they cross, sometimes they don't. And that was my upbringing. You know what I mean? I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of dysfunction, within family. My dad went to prison when I was 6 years old. He wasn't released until I was 19 years old, actually a few months before I was shot. Um, I lost, loved ones, family members. I lost friends to gun violence. When I was 13 years old, my 10-year-old sister was hit by a truck and she was killed. When I was 14, I was involved in, an incident that put me in the juvenile justice system, you know. But despite those things, I was able to overcome, and unfortunately, when I was 19, I was shot 5 times by a Pittsburgh police officer. As a result of that shooting, I not only was I paralyzed, but I was also facing up to 20 years in prison, during a case of what they say was mistaken identity. They thought I had a gun, I didn't have a gun, and fortunately, I was acquitted, of those charges. I had a civil case against the city of Pittsburgh. We settled, and going through all those different things, I had never, had therapy, right? From losing friends to gun violence, to my dad going to prison, losing my sister, getting shot. And I thought I didn't need therapy. I thought I was cool, until I was actually, I became like a national activist. I was traveling all around the country, talking about community organizing and healing. I decided I was going to run for city council. I was like,
Like,
it's
I'm gonna do it
interesting.
all.
I'm gonna do it all. Like, yeah, So it's interesting though, because even my intent, like, I wanted to serve community, but it was more of like a middle finger. Like, it was just like, yo, y'all did this to me, watch what I do. You know what I mean? And in the midst of like me running for city council, I end up having like a mental breakdown where, it was kind of like I was going through like a psychosis, you know what I mean? And it was a really tough time for me. And during that time, I was actually uh, filming. I was going to do a short film. My boy was like, man, this is a story like, guy, you get shot by the police and you run for city council in the same zone where the police shot you and you're going to win. Um, but I ended up meeting a therapist. When I met her, she told me, um, she gave me all the accolades. You know what I mean? She was like, "You're amazing," and I've been watching your work and all the things. And then she said, "The joy in your smile doesn't match the pain in your eyes." And she told
Ooh.
me I deserved a healthy heart, and it was so deep because
Mm,
I always wanted somebody to see me,
mm,
not for my work, but to see me as a human.
mm,
And I felt like a lot of people were focused on me being a hero. And, there weren't too many people focused on my healing. Right. And so, again, to go back to the family love, it's different, right? Like family love is like they know you. They know you hurting. They know when you
Mhm.
depressed. They know when you angry. And then you go out and then you got the smile. And then, you know what I mean? You put the mask on. And like everybody's like, oh, you're just so great. You know what I'm saying? And your sister like, mm. like,
You was just going through it 10 minutes ago.
exactly. You know what I'm saying? And so, that was the different, like it was different having somebody on the outside to
mm,
see what I didn't want to say.
Mm.
Right? To see what I didn't have the courage to say at that moment. And that was the beginning of my mental health journey.
mm,
I scheduled an appointment with her. Um, and that completely like changed, my perspective of life, because it's one thing, to talk like it's one thing to read like the Four Agreements, right? Or
mm,
like All About Love or The Road Less Traveled, right? And you have these words that become a part of your language, right? And so you can have the language of healing without actually doing the work.
ooh, that the quotes. Wes will tell you I'm always having a quote. You've had like 3 or 4 quotes that I'm going to share out. Um,
Yeah, and so I had the language of healing. However, when I decided to do the work, that's when the quality of my life began to change. And so um, as I reflect back on those moments, to be 31 now, to have the level of joy that I have now, and it's real joy. It's not the public joy, right? With the private suffering. It's like, yeah, I feel good. Um, there's still challenges. You know what I mean? What's to tell you, you might get some nerve damage and be like, yo, I don't want to. You know what I mean? We talk about forgiveness all week, and then you get that nerve pain, and you start thinking about the incident, right? And then you got to work through that again. You know what I'm saying? So there's still challenges, but to focus on the healing, to focus on the purpose, and to give yourself grace, right? Enough grace to say, I'm allowed to be upset today. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a lot, like it's a part of, like I love when people ask me about forgiveness, because they're like, yeah, how can I get there? And I'm like, it's a process, you know what I'm saying? And you never arrive. You might feel like you arrived today, you know what I'm saying? But let you, see something or feel something within your body, and those things jump back up at you. You know what I mean? And so, for me, the work is about, how can I prepare myself for when those nerve pains come, or prepare myself for, unfortunately, a video to go viral that I may catch, that may trigger me. And I'm still committed to my mission. I'm still committed, to the work. And my journey has been, a search for healing, a search for that peace of mind. And it started, right, as April knows now, it didn't start when I was shot. It started as I began to reflect on my entire life, excuse me. My first time, going to church was a funeral, and I remember it so vividly. And I remember that being the first time I suppressed my emotions,
Right.
Because the two first lessons I ever remember learning, and Wes, you might, identify with this, was fight, and don't cry.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And that was it. So I grew up, I knew how to fight. And at 5, going to that funeral, I remember, running up to my dad at the end. And I said, Dad, guess what? I didn't cry.
Mm.
And guess who else didn't cry? My uncle who lost his son. You know what I
That was
mean?
powerful in your story when you shared, like, he was taking care of everyone else. He was greeting at the funeral where he's burying his own child. That's strength. Well,
It's traumatizing.
and there you go. And we
Yeah.
need strength, and we're supposed to walk in that lane of strength. Like, be strong, but it's trauma. It's like
Because we become weak alone. Our sadness is alone. We're in a corner. We can't show it, right? You can't show it.
Yeah, and it's so deep because, that's not just my story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Each of you on this call, and many of you watching this right now, have, been in situations with loved ones who are experiencing the worst moments of their lives, and they're showing no emotion, and we like, wow, they strong, and but here's the other thing with that, right? As I began to unpack a lot of those experiences, many of those, traumatic moments and those lessons that I learned in those moments that can possibly be deemed as unhealthy sustained me.
mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's one thing to be like, it's traumatizing and maybe we should show emotion, but not showing emotion sustain, like, so it's like this weird thing, right, where I didn't realize it was unhealthy until I realized, what healthy coping was, right? Also, I don't know if, what my life would have looked like if I would have learned these healthy coping mechanisms sooner, because sometimes those survival skills, when you're in an environment where you have to survive, right? Those are tools that are necessary. So you can't give someone thriving tools, right, when they're in a survival environment.
Yes. 100%.
And so it's hard, right? So it's like me where I'm at now, it's hard for me. Like I'm like doing mediations and things in school, right? But like I have to, like, okay, let me check my privilege. Let me think about where I was in this situation. Let me offer up perspective, right? But also recognize that survival is survival, right? And how do we get our students, how we get our communities to a space where, people aren't forced to survive,
Leon, can I ask you? Well, I got a ton of stuff, and I know Wes does too. I think this is the first time we've been doing this for 3 years. Oh, we're in our 3rd year or past 3 years. We've been doing this a long time. And when you talked about love way in the beginning, like my eyes watered. This is the first time I felt like crying, in a beautiful way, you know, and thank you for sharing up to now, because what you speak of is what we try to share. Like, we believe that mindfulness and grace and compassion is allowed for all of us. And you basically captured all, you're like, you said all those things. So thank you for your vulnerability and exposing your heart. Like,
That's your level of
Yeah.
healing, bro. That's your journey of healing, that you are able to be as vulnerable and speak in a way with intention, um, that we feel that. You know, we feel it. I mean, man, listen. Like, I know your story, but I've learned a little bit more today. And you do it in such a great way. You know, you do it in such, you've been through a lot. You know, we all have in some way, but you've definitely been through a lot. And I think it's just beautiful to see how you can take accountability to what you lacked, and then be able to own it, and then share how you were able to heal through that process. And I think the joy in my smile does not match the pain in my eyes.
woo! We're gonna make a poster. Leon Ford quote.
Hey, that was from my therapist, you know.
Give us her name. Give us her name. Like,
Listen,
don't
so
give us her name.
but even that, man, it's just, I think I took something from that. You know what I mean? No lie. Like, I definitely know my journey, but that just hit me hard, you know, and it got to a place, like, for me to, like you just shared, like, you are such a powerful figure. People are pulling you left and right. They want to hear your story, but have you healed enough for yourself before you kind of put on this mask for everyone else to be benefited from what they think is your full healness, and you're still going through a journey. And I think that that's just important for anyone that's watching to understand. Like, it's not it's definitely more detrimental to all of us if we hold it in. And even though, like, we could sit there and make everything look good on TV or on a video, but like Leon said, when you have people that truly love you and that are watching your battles from the back end, like, those are the people that you need to stay authentic to too. You know what I mean? Because if they're watching you at your weakest moments, and then you put a mask on 20 minutes later to go show up for someone else, that makes the people that love you feel some type of way. And it's not like in a negative way, but it's like, listen, I'm trying to help this man heal. He's sitting out there. And that's me speaking from my own journey and perspective, right? Because I had to take a acknowledgement to, like, all the love that my mom and them would pour in, and then they would catch all of like the whiff of things, like the pain and the bad days, and then they're like, man, dude, you know, like, and he's serving and doing all this, but when he get home, it's your family calling you after a long day, like, hey, go lay down, get off your butt, right? Like, go make sure you're straight, go stretch your legs, have you drunk enough water? Like, I took a road trip 12 hours, and my mom, my sister, and my brother, all in separate text messages, said the same thing: go get some rest, right? Like, because they know me. But if I sat here and took that trip and then got on Instagram and I'm all out at clubs and stuff, they know what that effect is going to do for the next day, and then what that longevity could be. But I never shared that to anyone. So I'm out there making it seem like my body is indispensable in a way.
Yeah.
Right.
And people clapping for you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I see, bro. Like, yeah, you doing it. Like, you know what I'm saying?
And then when you're in a space where you feel safe, you can lash out, like, leave me alone. And your pain could come out, right? When your body's in pain, you snap at folks, like, you're like, whatever. And they're like, this, like, I'm trying to help you, and you over here yelling at me. And it's so important to be in your body and recognize your pain, and it's okay. We don't have to put on the mask, you know. Because when we do, I was thinking about you, Wes, when you were saying, like, we get weak alone. And I was talking with somebody, and she's an ally, you know, she's great. She's like, but equity work is 24/7 and you got to fight. I was like, but then we're dying. Then we're holding all that in and our nerves are shot. We're literally getting chronic diseases. Like, we are dying because we are not allowed to take the rest. We're not allowed to take off the mask. Mm-hmm. And we have to change that narrative. So I wanted to ask you, Leon, about narratives. What was, I'm going to keep putting up his book, An Unspeakable Hope.
And we will share a link in the comments and things as well for everyone to grab it, and all Leon's information will be on our newsletter. So make sure you sign up.
Thank you. Tell them. How was it when you're talking about this healing journey? And I'm making an assumption. I don't know if you writing the story was part of that or if it brought things out, but you shared like the book start. I mean, you do share your story of what happened in the beginning. Yeah. And that's another thing that I love, that we asked you to introduce yourself and share your story. And that was a part of the story. Like, you're like, a cop shot me 5 times. That was like in the middle of the story towards the end. Yep. Like, you started with love, with family, with this, with that. And it's like, there's a whole narrative around.
Before you even got shot.
Yeah.
Your story didn't start after getting those bullets in your body. Your story started from a whole journey from the moment you opened your eyes up.
And when you see strength-based approach, this is what it looks like to me, Leon. So how was it for you writing this book?
It was very therapeutic within itself. And I would say that going to therapy helped me unpack those stories, right? And so, if you like, as you read the book, like, I'm not just telling a story, right? I'm literally unpacking those experiences that I had amongst those stories, right? Again, and I talk about the first time I went to a church, I'm like, oh, it was a funeral. Okay, what do I remember about the funeral? What lessons did I learn? And I really was able to leverage therapy, to unpack, to ask those tough questions and unpack those experiences. So it's not just like, hey, I met this person I want here, and this is what happened, right? The unpacking helped me understand myself even more, right? Helped me understand the environment in which I grew up in even more, which helped me understand the people within that environment even more. And it was therapeutic because of the grace that I was able to extend, right? The healing process, within certain relationships, right? For years, I blamed my older brother for things and for, introducing me to, different, criminal activities and things like that. But then I realized, like, he was like 16 when my dad got indicted, and he assumed the role as our father. You know what I mean? And, he was trying to look out for all of us the best he could, and, my granddad always say, children don't do as you say, they do as you do. Right. And so he was just doing as he saw, and unfortunately, we came from an environment where, the people who took care of us, they made their money a certain way, you know what I mean? And it was normal. And the way they looked out for one another was like, yo, let me help you get some money. You know what I mean? And so there were so many lessons in that. And I had to acknowledge, like, yo, there was a lot of love. Like, even though from the outside looking in, people may not understand it, right? And it's very dysfunctional, but you have to acknowledge the love. Like, people had good intent, right? And so those were the things that I was unpacking as I was reading, like, writing the book. And it just helped me, like, and that's what I tried to do. I tried to humanize people in these spaces, because now I have the privilege, to be amongst communities with people who are completely disconnected from how I grew up, right? And it's easy for them to watch the news and have a narrative, right, of a certain, environment or people within those environments. And I tried my best, right, to like let me paint this picture for you. You know what I mean? Let me show you how complex and complicated it is, but also let me show you how much love exists here. Let me show you like the compassion to say, yo, your dad went to jail. I'm gonna pull you up under my wing and I'm gonna teach you everything I know. Right. And that person is teaching you everything that somebody else taught them. Right. And so they're not even thinking it's dysfunctional. It's just normal. Right. It's like, just don't get caught. You know what I'm saying? And but there's so much love in that. But it's also so much dysfunction. But in order to get past it, we have to acknowledge it.
Right.
There's so many people who read my book from where I come from, and they're like, yo, I never even saw it like that.
Yep.
I never even put those pieces together like that. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's routine, it's normal. You know what I mean? It's the culture.
It's the
You know,
culture.
I spoke. You know, I was at the high school last week. And I was just talking about culture. And healthy coping mechanisms. And I talked about funerals and death, and I was like, yo, like it's not normal or healthy, right? The fact that after a loved one, passes away, the culture is to get high and drunk. Like, when you're from the hood, you go to a funeral, whether it's in Kansas City, Atlanta,
LA.
Philly, LA,
I'm from
you know what I'm
LA,
saying?
so yeah.
If someone is murdered and they're from the hood, young people and even the older people, you know what I'm saying, unless you got the aunties and uncles who may be in the church or the Nation of Islam or something, you feel me? But everybody else is like,
they'll still get down and sit around the table.
Yeah, they will. They'll still
right.
They be judging, but they be in the function.
They be like,
And they
let's
know,
some
like,
libations.
and so it's like, it's culture. Right. And so where does this come from? Right. And how do we change it? How do we figure out like what are the healthiest coping mechanisms that we can leverage, and how do we prevent ourselves from, this, epidemic of drug use and alcohol abuse, right? So there's so much layers to it.
Yeah.
And the narrative is like, I wanted to acknowledge those things, right? One, without glorifying the culture,
Yeah.
right? Also without, putting like demonizing people.
Exactly. And demeaning the whole thing. Like
Exactly.
you said that, like there's resiliency that has come from those practices within our culture. Yeah. And we have survived because of a lot of those things. So how do we shift it so that we're able, I know people say thrive, but honestly, to keep some of those resiliency muscles that we've built and then elevate and move forward. And part of it is it's us being able to look back, but recognizing how things have been gatekept, recognizing how we've been oppressed, recognizing that the systemic ways of this world have pushed us into this box. And what happens when you're pushed in a box? I want to fight. I want to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It came to my mind of thinking, I use this story a lot when I talk to people, or not even a story, a narrative. I'm like, most people can look at my community and look down on it, and I go and I see the beauty in it. And it's like you can go and see abandoned homes and stuff, but you don't know that grandma that's been on the corner house, been there her whole life, that if you go there, she'll make sure that you fed, she'll make sure that you're good. Like, and just because her circumstances might not be like yours doesn't mean she's a bad person. Or like I was share, like, me and my friends would joke about it, but I'm like, man, like, if you understand culture and you understand how the process happens, you also look at people that have drug abuse and reference most people in the hood, you call them crackheads, right? Like, you hear that term a lot. But then, like, if you know the people, could be your uncle, your aunt, just because they have a habit don't mean that they're a bad person. They'll come, clean up your house,
100%.
make sure you good, feed you everything, but they might need a fix. And I'm not saying that that's something, but that's our culture where if we understand that we can humanize those people, because that's what I was hearing you say, was like humanizing the circumstances in a sense of like who they are. It's just kind of what they know. But then finding a way to say that we can grow from that by not looking down on that, but finding the lessons and things that we can gain from it and then evolve. Like we need evolution within our community and our culture. But evolution doesn't look like we put down. I think a lot of people put down because the other cultures are putting us down. And so it's like if I'm listening to other people put us down, like our habits are wrong, this is wrong, black man is threatening, right? We're thinking about that. So when we think about someone having an anger issue, we're not saying like, man, you need to go talk to somebody, you're hurting. We're like, dang, he got a problem, right? And it's because the other person from the outside looking in is looking at us like we have a problem, and we have that narrative within ourselves to come. And so I really appreciate you sharing that of like not like humanizing people and understanding where they are, their place in life, their habits, things like that. But I think just living, like you said, someone teaching you something that they were taught, but that's all that they were taught. They definitely are thinking that they have great intentions, and so it goes back to the history of black folk. It goes back to why, we're still, in a sense, still talking about breaking generational curses. We're still talking about all of these things that have truly affected our community. Why do we have to dig in and say, hey, I need you to find a way to heal, when I'm looking at other communities and they have healed, right? Like, or they have had generational trauma that they found a way to fix.
Yeah.
But for us, we're still trying to figure out how to fix that narrative. And like what I'm hearing is even like within the book, because I definitely haven't read it, and I'm definitely going to tap into it. But what I'm hearing is that even within the book, it's like you're changing that your life narrative, your perception on your life. This is how I grew up from the outside in, but this is how I grew up from the inside out.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah.
And I think that's the power. That's power. That's power in story. That's power in being vulnerable, but that's power in being able to see your life from a different lens than the one that people have projected on you.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Leon.
Yeah.
We have 10 minutes, but we could go a little longer. But I know everyone's on a schedule and we want to be respectful of your time. We're going to ask you to come on again if you don't mind. I don't know the date and time, but
well, we family.
We're connected now. And that's what I want to speak to is, first of all, I'm just so thankful you're sharing this story about you're like, I'm putting the middle finger up to the man. Although that's not what you were directly saying, but I'm going to do the work. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to do the work. Wes has had that same story. I've had that same story. Like, I'm changing the world and F you all. I'm not going to be oppressed. I'm not going to be this. And the toll it takes on trying to be the healer when you still need to be healed. Mm-hmm. And when you're suffering and trying to do the work. And I have to be honest with you, I was really in your Here Foundation. I would love for you to share the work you're doing. And it was interesting to me because, I try to support everybody. I'm idealistic, but I like was hesitant. I'm like, ooh, working with the cops. You know what I mean? I was like, ugh. And now I'm doing work with you within that. And so I would love for you to share about your work and how it is for you and how you got there and just,
Absolutely. So it's interesting because, I didn't wake up like, oh, like kumbaya, like let's work with the police. Also, a lot of that work, like my family loves me and they're proud of me, but there's elements of my family that's not supportive of that. You know what I'm saying? They like, like, okay. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, I still feel some type of way for what they've done to you. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting dynamic that I'm in, but my perspective was this. When I was in full activist mode and I'm selling shirts that says criminals on patrol for, the cops. um, I'm, protesting, I'm calling out people on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm, writing, post. I mean, all the things, you know, critical thinking in me said, well, what am I actually changing? And I have a son, right? Who he's 11 years old now. How can this social media post change my son's experience? Right? It feels good. I'm getting those retweets, and I'm like, yeah, 200 retweets. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, in all reality, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so I began to think about those things. And I took a class called Police and Society with one of my good friends and mentors, Dr. Conti at Duquesne University. And he was always adamant about, like, man, your story, you could really change the way, police communities. And I'm like, I don't know about this, but as I took the class Police and Society, and I got to learn more about policing and what their jobs are and different policies and procedures, and how many police departments there are in America, which is almost like 18,000. We have I think we have over 100 police departments in like Western Pennsylvania. So if you think, like, I think Upper St. Clair may have their own police,
We do. It's right down the street.
right? Pittsburgh, Braddock,
Every
North
county.
Carolina, right? Like bro, these aren't counties though, bro. Like these are
Yeah.
Little townships,
maybe
boroughs.
little
Yeah.
townships, right? So it's like, yo, and you might have one department with 300 officers, another department with two,
Yeah.
right? So it's like it's a very interesting situation going on there. So I thought to myself, how can I change, like, leverage my influence and relationships to have a positive impact on Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh police. And through different friends and mentors, I was able to build a relationship with our former police chief, Scott Schubert, who became my co-founder. I air him out on social media, and a mentor was able to bring us together, and we got to build a healthy rapport, and that was the beginning of the Here Foundation. So it's really solutions based, right? Like, how do we leverage our collective stories? I'm not the only one with a story,
Mm-hmm.
right? The chief has a story, he has a perspective, right? The commanders, that sit on our board, they have their stories, they have perspectives. The corporate folks, some of the the activists on our board, right, have their stories and their perspectives. And what happens when we respect everybody's story, right? What happens when we understand the true power of telling your story, right? And when you understand the true power of telling your story, you learn to appreciate and respect other people's stories, right? Even
Yeah.
if they're different, from yours. And another thing, that's really helped me is the power of curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I don't just assume, right, that I'm right and you're wrong and my story's better than yours, and I've been through things and you haven't, and whatever, I'm more equipped for this work. No, right? It's a collective effort, and we have a collective story, right? And so having the curiosity, and ability to ask the right question, right?
And I'm gonna call you the philosopher next time I see you.
um,
That's elevation.
yeah, and it's healthy, and it's inspirational and encouraging,
Right.
right? Because you might have someone like our board, for the Here Foundation. We have so many different stories. Within each of those stories, I'm fine. Like, an example, one of our board members shared a story about how she felt as a police officer, right? As a Black police officer, being a police officer in Pittsburgh, right? And, like, yo, she didn't know, like, like what is the path toward being like a Black chief or like getting promoted to these more executive level positions, until she joined Noble, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement. And she went to the Noble conference in New Orleans, and it was just like a game changer for her. Like she fell in love with her job again because of Noble. And she's like, man, I think, more officers, Black officers, should be involved in Noble. And I think young people should see these Black officers. And I was like, oh, cool, right? Like, let's do it. Let's like, start a mentoring program. We mentor these, young people who are maybe or maybe not interested in careers in law enforcement. And then we take them with Black officers to New Orleans,
I just
right?
got an email, Leon, to like support. Is that what that was for? Isn't that?
Yeah, so I did a fundraiser for my birthday. I'm almost at $5,000. And yeah, we'll be taking some young people to the conference in August, the Noble Conference, right? So it was her story, right, that connected with my story as someone who was shot by a police officer, right? And now we have a program, right? What that'll influence and impact, the way young people are policing. And can you imagine the level of care, right, and appreciation if some of these young people actually do become law enforcement, right? Take up careers in law enforcement, right? They absolutely uphold law and order, but they'll have this level of compassion and understanding that can potentially, prevent someone from being in the situation that I was in when I was 19 years old.
And I think there's so much beauty. First of all, you told that story about a Black woman, Women's History Month, on your board, which is real important. So please share with that woman like the accolades. And there's few women, especially Black women, who sit on boards. So for you to present that for Women's History Month is powerful. And you know what? Like you said, because of that, look what the outcome is. And that's part of this whole thing. Instead of us internalizing the systems, instead of us going into these police forces as adopting their system, and because we know some Black folks who have been police officers who act worse than the white police officers, but when you come into it being able to own who you are and not having to deny the compassion you have for your people, for your culture, for your way of life, then you can change that system. And that's more compassionate policing, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we need. So the power of stories.
Yeah. So, we definitely could be able to talk about this over and along. Like, Leon, your story is powerful, bro. And like the work that your story is powerful before your accident, your story is powerful after your accident. Your story is even more powerful after you found healing. Right.
Absolutely.
You have all these different areas, right, that I'm able to hone in and acknowledge. And so just a couple of tidbits, and then we'll kind of ask you some things like your reading or anything that you want to provide outside of your book for others. But what I did really get, and I respect and I appreciate, I was just talking to an individual yesterday that's Black and disabled, and we were talking about how do we, in a way, we were speaking on how do we amplify our work without always having to make posts, right? Like, and I really appreciated you speaking of activism outside of social media, because likes and everything might bring awareness, but it's not truly creating change. Absolutely. And change has to happen internally. You have to get in, you have to do the legwork in some way. You have to be able to move the systems. You need to bring people with different perspectives in to have a conversation to create a better solution to whatever the problem is. And I think that your work and that the foundation is doing that. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of people, Like, I've witnessed, I get stuff shared, but I took away from social media a while ago because I care more about my nonprofit and the work and just the lives we change every day. Like that fills my cup. As long as I know I'm changing and doing the work I believe in, my cup is full. I don't have to share nothing on social media or anything because I'm serving every day. Their stories, their family, that's filling me every day because I know I'm doing the work. And I really appreciate you sharing that. Like, do the work. It is good to bring awareness, but if you believe in something, do the work and go have conversations with people you might not had a conversation with before. Like, that's the power. Understanding why they see you the way they do so that you can shift that perspective by owning who you are. We don't own who we are. We're always wearing a mask. So I appreciate that. And again, just if you don't mind, share kind of some things you're reading or what you would want people to get, and then we'll kind of go around and then we'll end it.
Yeah, right now I'm reading the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak. And it's interesting because I couldn't like get myself to a place to read after finishing my book. Like once I completed my book and having to like the last like 2 edits, I was just like, bruh. Like, like I gotta read this whole thing again, like and again and again. And so and we launched, like my book released May 9th of 2023. And so it was really hard for me to get back into the habit of reading. And I'm an avid reader. I love to read, but I see how some people after a dissertation, they're like, yo, I don't want to look at a book right now, So this is the first book that I'm diving into since I've launched my book, which is which I'm really enjoying so far. Outside of that, man, I'm still practicing my meditation. And spending time with family. I coach boxing, so I'm like in the office. I go to the boxing gym. My son and my nephew, they're here. That's it. Like family, community, like you said, it's like it's so rewarding. Like me going to that gym every day and hearing those kids, Coach Leon, Coach Leon. That's more rewarding than getting 2,000 likes on Instagram.
I'm so glad you shared that.
Yeah, and so even when we were at the parade yesterday, just to join, them. It's just been a great season of life, and I've, like you said, moved in more into the work. Now I'm actually the director of external affairs for the Here Foundation now, which last year, I was co-founder, but I didn't have an actual role. I was traveling, doing my speaking and everything, which was great, but it's taxing on the body. I'm eating out, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm usually in the gym, I'm working out like once or twice a month, like when I can find it, you know what I mean? So like the quality of life is much better for me in this season. And I spoke at the county jail this week. I'm in the schools every week, so it's just been a great journey. So.
Thanks for sharing that, because that's something we really want everyone to get out of the end of this. What is it that you do for your practices that help you thrive, help you move on? And you did it. You're like, I read, I meditate, I work out. And it doesn't have to be so hard. It can be, but you don't have to be on a schedule. Like, I got to meditate for 30 minutes a day. I got to read this book 15 minutes a day. I have to do this. Like, it can be very organic and it can be real. And community and family. We try to say these things, but this is why we have this platform. So someone like you can be a witness and a testimony for others. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So
all right, April, what you reading? What you sharing with us?
Listen, I'm being vulnerable right now. So there's this book called Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown, The Politics of Feeling Good. And I was sharing it with my partner, Quincy. He was like, what is that about? Because on the, I don't know if you all see, but
I saw it.
these animals still procreating. But if you follow Adrienne Marie Brown, and she's all lowercase, she's a social activist, justice, LGBTQ, like she is everything. The basic premise is, and she loves Audre Lorde and Octavia Butler. The basic premise is like, if you know what it means to have joy, pleasure, if you know for yourself how it means to feel good, that's what you'll expect from community. That's what you'll expect from systems. That will push your politics further because you will expect that from the outside of you. And we kind of talked about that today. If you don't know it for yourself, then you don't know it outside. And she's very open, like there's a healthy way to enjoy pleasurable things, as opposed to society telling you, oh my God, just how you're saying, we're drinking and we're smoking at a wake and a funeral and a repast. That's because it's a healthy way for us to cope. But then we're being imprisoned and we're being locked up for it. But now marijuana is legal. You know what I mean? So it's kind of goes to this. So it's a good book, and you could follow her on Instagram. Like, she's very, very good. So
thank you for sharing, April. We appreciate
What about yourself?
I'm actually reading Shift Happens. Who told us about that? It was
was it the guy last week? Was it
no. I think it was
Melissa? Dr.
Yeah.
Atkins?
Yep.
Yes.
So it's powerful. I mean, honestly, it's just a powerful book. It's by Robert Holden, and it's called Shift Happens. And basically it says shift happens when you do the damn work. So at the end of the day, that's what happens. Change happens when you do the internal work. And this is what, at least this is what I'm gaining from this book. And
you said you're going to read it.
I did. And it's been very good. So again, Leon, thank you so much, man, for taking out of your Sunday. Shout out to the fam for showing authentic living, because I've been graced with everybody today, you know. So
let me talk this real quick before we end. Wes has been here a few times, Leon. Wes and I, like, he lived in LA. I'm from LA. He's in LA. Like, we cross paths. But at Open Up, we've been talking about doing some type of conference, right, Wes, for a couple of years here, so we can bring Wes. So now I have this vision of Leon and Wes and me, like, I'm just dropping.
Yeah.
We're gonna just share it with you now, all right?
Planting the seed.
Let's do it. You know what I mean? Look, Dr. Conti from Duquesne University, he's texting me right now. They always have space. Actually, Wes, I have a meeting. Coming up, I think next week, with, I'm working on some things with the University of Pittsburgh. Dr. Clyde Pickett, man, he's super dope. So I'll get you the information and see if you could join virtually. Because we're trying to get, more. I sit on the board of the Ryan Shazier Foundation here in Pittsburgh. They do a lot of stuff with individuals with spinal cord injuries. But as you know, right, in those spaces, man, there's just not a lot of, Black men and women, right, represented in those spaces, even in the peer support groups. You know what I mean? I know, there's people who will reach out to us that had, like, for questions that they can ask their doctors that they're not comfortable asking their doctors. You know what I mean? And so it's the small things, right? And so, I'm trying to figure that out. And then the Unite to Fight Paralysis conference is in Atlanta this year. And so they're really trying to get more Black and brown people involved in the conference.
I'll be there.
Perfect. Yeah. So I sent your name a few weeks ago to Matthew Roderick. So he should be reaching out. But these spaces, you know what I mean? Like, when you have, like, white doctors, white nurses, the peer support groups are white. If you have the stigma of actually being shot because you're young, and you're going to assume that they assume you were shot, and if you were shot, it makes you even more reluctant, right, to be in those spaces. Like, there's just so many different things. So yeah, I'll follow up with you on that as well, bro.
Absolutely. This is beautiful. All right, well, let's give everybody back their Sunday, Leon. enjoy the rest after your birthday. You all send them a shout out, belated birthday. Wes, you're
Thank
traveling.
you.
Take care of your travels, and my heart is full.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. My heart is full also. Wes, you said you were driving?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
I have your email. I have
Yep.
your email. I'll send you the link to my audiobook. I'll send you a copy of the audiobook so you can listen to it.
That's my boy. I love it. I love it.
There you go.
Thank you everybody for watching. Until next time.